Welcome back to another awesome episode of Let's Have Some Fun with Airplanes. If you don't know me, my name is Kaity. I'm a professional pilot, but today I will just be riding along with the Falcon Field RV team as we do a 9-ship 4th of July flyover. So come fly with us. We're on the way to the airport. Full throttle formation team. The Falcon Field RV formation team is a group of pilots that own Vans RV aircraft and like to do formation flying. They do a lot of charitable flying. They do a lot of flying over of sports games or parades or other events, a lot of military support kind of events. And they are very, very skilled high-level pilots that have a very extensive background. Most of them are military, then went to the airlines, and now this is kind of their hobby that they do for fun. But when I say hobby, it is really an understatement because these guys are total pros. So we started out by getting to the airport about an hour before the takeoff time, and then there's a full brief. We have mission data cards, we have walkthroughs and step drills, and we're doing the whole 9. So for those of you student pilots who are thinking you don't need a chair fly, these guys have tens of thousands of hours, and they are stepping through the formation flight and what it's going to look like, talking through every detail, frequencies, altitudes, any kind of friction points, questions, you name it, they are going over it because preparation is a huge part of this kind of flying and really every kind of flying. But it just goes to show that even the really, really experienced guys take it seriously and they're really skilled on the fundamentals, even with so many hours and so much experience. So the harness is Delta 757 hardware because that is what this pilot retired off of. So he went and bought the hardware when he retired. So the pilot that I was riding along with is named Steve, and he has 23,000 hours of flight time. 14,000 of them are in this RV, which he built with his own 2 hands. So really, really cool experience. He basically talked through everything on the whole flight and was essentially just instructing me on formation flying and a lot of different things, which I've got a lot of value out of. But I just thought it was cool. He retired from Delta and he got the safety harness from a 757 and put it in his airplane. I am such a nerd for that kind of aviation stuff, and I just think it was really cool to kind of bring in part of his whole career at Delta that he really loved into his passion of flying that he still gets to enjoy in retirement now. So after the briefing, the walkthroughs, Steve briefing me on the seat belts and how to get out of the canopy and all the essential safety equipment in the airplane and all the other things that you brief as the pilot in command. We taxied out with 9 other airplanes. And when you taxi in a tailwheel airplane, you have to kind of make an S motion so you can see around the nose, because the nose of the airplane sits up a little higher than with a tricycle gear airplane. So that kind of shows you a little bit of that along the taxiway. Also, we're taxiing with a bunch of other airplanes close by, so we're staggering because we need to be able to see the other airplanes in front of us along the way. Then we moved right into formation takeoffs, which is so cool. You'll see a couple different angles here with Matthew in this kind of yellow-orange airplane, and I'm in the white one. So basically, they're taking off in a formation. So they go in kind of a 2-ship. They have to control their speed, watch each other instead of just paying attention to their own takeoff roll like normal. Now, Steve was telling me that wake turbulence can be a factor on these kind of takeoffs, which is totally understandable. And you'll see some of that here. But obviously we had safety contingencies for that as well. And it really isn't much because these aircrafts are all generally the same size and weight. Whereas if you were taking off in like a light airplane behind a heavy airplane, it's going to have a significant impact on wake turbulence. These are both small aircraft and you can kind of maneuver right and left of the wake turbulence. And so it wasn't as much of a factor. So the plan was basically everybody takes off in kind of a 2-ship, and then we all just loosely formed up in the air to fly down south to Roosevelt, which is about 25 miles to the south of KFFC. So you'll notice that cumuliform layer out there, and it's always pretty bumpy underneath that. That's very typical in the summer. It'll be bumpy underneath that cumuliform layer and then smooth on top, which makes sense with all the heat and humidity in Georgia. So once we got in the air, we kind of linked up with our other group that we were
flying formation with. And this whole time, Steve is explaining to me basically how you fly formation. So what he's saying is that yellow and black plane off of our left, he's just looking at that. And he's saying when you can see about 3 inches or so of the left side of the horizontal stabilizer around the rudder, that's when you're in the right spot. If you see more of it or less of it, then you're too close or too far away. So I thought that was really cool that that's actually what they look at. And you'll notice throughout this whole time, even when we're in formation, he's got his mark and he's just looking at that one airplane, which was really cool to see. At this point, we were getting into a little tighter formation because we were about 2 minutes out. And so they were going to do a flyover of a parade down in Roosevelt and start off with just an initial flyover and then go into what they called the beehive, which is essentially everybody doing circles over the town and then turning the smoke on and off at different times and sort of doing like a spiral maneuver in the air over the ground. And I bet it looked really, really cool from the ground. The plane that I was riding in was in kind of the middle of the formation, and then the plane that Matthew's in, this yellow one, was more at the end, so he could see a different angle, and it was just really cool to see everybody's different segments, but from the ground they all look like one total formation. But everybody's just doing their part, doing their thing, and like Steve said, it is just a lot about trust, because you trust that the other pilots are flying what they're supposed to be flying, and everybody's skill is up to a certain level. So the way that they handle radio frequencies for these formation flights is they have a flight lead. So that was JR, and he basically does the radio communication for outside of the formation. So he'll be on a CTAF or whatever the case may be, and he'll make radio calls and say that it is a 9 ship or it is a 12 ship or whatever number of aircraft they're flying with today. Everybody else has their transponder off, so that there's not this crazy radar return or this crazy ADS-B thing and nobody knows what's going on. So you'll pick up JR's transponder and see that, but then listen and hear that he's saying, hey, it's actually 9 aircraft. And then throughout the formation, they have another frequency that they use as their air-to-air, and they're just communicating on that, and he will give time hacks as far as where they are in their plan and what everybody's doing. So a lot of coordination going on, a lot of planning, and everybody really was executing flawlessly. It was really interesting to see when you're in the formation, there's a lot more movement than what it looks like on the ground. So when they fly over and you're on the ground, you're just like, oh, that's cool. They made a perfect diamond or whatever it may be. And it looks very stable, but in the air, the pilots are really working. There's a lot of little movements, and as you can see, it's turbulent right here. So they're just kind of working it and really trying to hold on to their position in the formation. This was when we were in the beehive. So everybody's going in and basically doing a loop kind of circular pattern over the ground and turning smoke on and doing this whole formation in like a big circle. So, of course, when the smoke is on, you can really see the wake turbulence, which is kind of cool. You can see that spiral, and that was something that you also kind of wanted to avoid. You want to fly close to the formation ground track you're supposed to be in and fly the same altitude, but you don't want to be just kind of slamming through their wake turbulence the whole time. So the pilot I was flying with was just kind of offsetting right outside of that. But it's just kind of cool to see the actual smoke and then see the airflow patterns that the plane makes as it moves through the air, highlighted by the smoke. So the original plan before we had 3 riders was for everyone to land, go in and do this parade at Roosevelt, and then go do dinner in Roosevelt, and then load up and go back to Falcon Field. But since we had 3 people that were not part of the formation team, they just decided to have us enter the pattern with the formation and then exit the pattern and fly back to Falcon Field, which was honestly a nice idea. I mean, I think that it would have been kind of a long day for us to go hang out all day down there and fly back, and we didn't really have anything to do down there, so they made that exception, which was really super nice. This whole day was really fun and just really, really a cool experience for us. Something that was amazing to me is how many power changes they were making. So again, it just looks so smooth when you're not in the plane, when you're on the ground, but they really are trying to keep that spacing, and it just requires a lot of work from the pilots and a lot of power changes because they're all trying to fly the exact same airspeed to stay together. So something that you may have picked up on earlier in the video is these are experimental aircraft, which basically means that they are a kit build. So the owner of the plane I was flying in built the plane himself and has an experimental, basically, airworthiness certificate for the aircraft. So it's placarded in the airplane, and that basically means that these pilots can make decisions about what they want in the airplane, such as avionics and things of that nature. So sometimes in experimental aircraft, you'll actually see some nicer avionics than in general aviation because they don't have to comply with the same certified rules, and they can add stuff in there that they just prefer. So that's kind of cool. I mean, that's a reason a lot of people like the Vans aircraft in general aviation is, number one, if you build it, you're buying from a kit, building it, and then the moment that it is a functioning airplane, it already has a ton of equity. The other side of it, like I said, is you can add your own avionics. You can make decisions about it. You don't have to spend quite the same amount of money that people do on certified aircraft. And the experimental thing just basically in this instant means that it is a kit build aircraft that was assembled without the supervision and quality control of the production certificate holder. So lots of people do this, and that's kind of an interesting idea if you're someone that's mechanically inclined. I mean, obviously that's a lot of work to build your own airplane, but that could be a real money-saving hack. So look into that. You can see here we're heading over towards Roosevelt Airport, and these aircraft enter the pattern via initial. Now, if you're not familiar with initial, it is basically the leg up pattern that is over final approach, and then you brake or make a left-hand turn, 180-degree turn to the downwind. So if you're ever flying on the traffic pattern and someone calls initial, look over final approach. That's where they are. This is an approved FAA traffic pattern entry. It's just not as standard in general aviation and civilian aircraft. But like I said, a lot of these guys are former military, and they know what initial is, they know what the brake is, they know what the perch is and all that different stuff. So that's how they were entering the pattern here and staying in formation and doing formation landings. Now, the three of us that were riding along were just going to kind of turn to the downwind, exit the pattern, and then head back to Falcon Field. So now we're almost on the downwind. We basically came in over final on initial, flew down the runway, took a left, and then ended up on the downwind. You can see other planes here turning base, but we're going to go ahead and head back to Peachtree City, to Falcon Field, and just land there with the three of us that had riders. It was really cool. Along the way back, they let us fly, they let us do steep turns, we did a little bit of formation, and it was just really cool. These guys are really giving back to the next generation of aviation. It's awesome to see, and I feel like we should all be trying to find ways to do this as much as we can, because it's a grind, you know. A lot of student pilots are out there just trying to get through it, and it is a really difficult career. There is, moments when maybe the training is not so fun and you're kind of forgetting like why you got into this maybe, but this is a moment that might really reignite that passion and joy and what got you into aviation in the first place. I've been able to ride along with the Falcon Field RV Squadron and Full Throttle Formation team before, and it was one of my favorite flights I've ever done. We did a flyover during COVID of a hospital in appreciation for the medical staff there, and I think we had like 25 aircraft in this formation. It was just incredible. It was so much fun. So it was really cool to get to do this with my brother and my husband, because they both had the same experience after this flight where they were just so in love with aviation, so excited. And my brother's actually moving on to getting his instrument rating now and moving into becoming a professional pilot. So these kind of flights really do have an impact, and it was just such a cool thing that they allowed us to come with. So it was a short 15-minute flight back up to Falcon Field. We linked up with the other 2 aircraft, did a little formation flying, and then we all kind of broke off and did our own little fun flying on the way back. Landed in Peachtree City just around dinner time, which was perfect. It was not terribly hot today, but it was just kind of nice to get back while it was not nasty weather or anything like that. It was a beautiful day today. And we landed runway 31 in Peachtree City, KFFC, taxied back in, put the planes away, and then it was time for the beer light to turn on. So very true to pilot form here. We all linked up at the hangar that we had Debrief at and just had some snacks, a couple beers, and it was just cool to talk and hear about everybody's aviation experience, what their backgrounds were, and some military stories and stuff like that. So we are super grateful that they allowed us to ride along on this flight. This was such a fun day. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this as much as we enjoyed flying it. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. We can reach out to these guys and ask them specific questions if you're interested in that. But overall, it was just one of those aviation days that really makes it all feel so surreal. And what better way to celebrate the 4th of July than a bunch of independent citizens flying around their airplanes and celebrating the US of A. I mean, general aviation is one of the things that I just love about the US. We have such a huge access to airports that we don't have the landing fees other countries have, and we do have a lot more freedom in that area than a lot of other countries. So I just really think this was kind of an appropriate thing for a 4th of July flyover. So thanks for watching, guys. That was our Falcon Field RV Squadron flyover of Roosevelt Parade for 4th of July. I hope you guys enjoyed.
Just got done with the formation flight. Matthew, what were you saying?
I'm buying an RV. You guys heard it here first. We're going to start doing some formation and acrobatics. Like, this channel is expanding. So stay tuned.
He is addicted.